we go. And then I'm going to mute everybody. Okay. And everybody, you know, quiet your screens. You know, you go to the little screen button and click it off. That should be good. And so, hi, as you all know, I'm Karen Israel. I want to say thank you to this Franklin Art Association for inviting me to teach or to demo. And you know, I've been painting in pastel a lot of years. Mostly, I've used other mediums. I started out with watercolor. And interestingly, I've been excited to go back to using the watercolor. Here, let's see if I can, I wonder if I can pin, I just want to make sure. Are you all seeing me large? I just want to make sure before we get going. I pinned myself, so maybe that makes me larger. I have used all the mediums, and I have gone back to using watercolor first on pastel paper. And as you guys probably know, because a lot of you said you've used pastel before, there's basically two kinds of pastel papers that are manufactured. There's the non-sanded and the sanded. Mostly I work on sanded, and there's different grits of how sandy, you know, how rough the paper is. So this paper is Pastel Premier. It's pretty gritty. I taped it all the way around. I should have taped this side, but I didn't. But you should tape it on 4 sides if you're going to get it wet, especially with water. You know, I'm going to use watercolor first to lay in the values. Now, this is not what I'm going to be painting on because it takes a little time to dry, and I didn't want to take the time to do that. So this design is a little different than what I'm actually going to demo for you. But I'm not even going to watercolor the whole thing. I'm just going to show you my process of how I use watercolor as an underpainting. And the reason, like, you can use dry pastel as an underpainting. People use the dry pastel and then they take alcohol on a brush, rubbing alcohol, not drinking, and you can melt it. I mean, that's a different technique, and that stains the paper. And the purpose of it is it gives you your value plan. I like to work from life, but you know, I didn't have the time to get together a real live flower arrangement. I do have, oh, you can't see it, but I'll show you here. Oops, I stepped on something. I have these flowers on the other side of my studio, which are really not these flowers, but I'm incorporating some of these shapes because they're simple shapes, and I love, look how gorgeous and dark. I don't even know what these are called, but they're just absolutely beautiful. But I'm not literal, like, here's the photograph, and I like working from a black and white because then I'm not married to the colors that were originally there. And I added extra paper here for my design because I wanted to pull I did this painting already, but now I want to pull it so that it makes a V here. And, you know, I'm using like a lot of those diagonals in this plan and in the one I'm really going to do for you. But I added, as you can see, I added a few of these flowers or these shapes over there. So I try not to be literal. If I'm working from a photo, I certainly try not to be literal. Even if I set up the flowers, I mean, flowers wilt and they move and they change and the light changes. So I'm not exactly literal either to what I actually see in a still life because, you know, everything might be lined up perfect. And then a few hours later, they start to wilt, and now you're like, oh, that wrecks my design. That wrecks my concept, because I'm a big design person. And that's why, in fact, before we started recording, I mentioned I'm teaching a workshop about designing, about composition and design for the Central Mass Pastel Society. So anyway, all right, so this is sanded paper. Not all of them take water, not all of them take alcohol. If you're gonna do that as the underpainting, you kind of have to know your paper. And know, you know, because sometimes the alcohol will wreck the grit and make the glue gunky. And this paper only takes water. It doesn't take alcohol well. It's Pastel Premier. The one I'm going to actually really paint for you on, you'll see the next one after I do the quick watercolor demo, that's a different paper. That's called Luxe Archival, and it's a brand new paper that just came out on the market, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So I like an underpainting, whether it's a dry or a wet underpainting, you know, I like that because it gives me a jumping point from which to express myself. I mean, I like working in a lighter toned colored paper and then putting my values in because it works up really quickly. And I use, in this method, I'm going to use watercolor. And this is kind of what my watercolor palette looks like. Happens to be clean because I'm demoing, but generally it's a mess. And I'm just going to spray it just to open up the colors a bit. And I happen to like a flat watercolor brush. Don't buy an expensive one because this is sandy paper and it's going to eventually wear the brush out. But, you know, for a cheap brush, I just like use a 1/2 inch or a 1 inch. And I have a couple of jars of clean water here and of course paper towels, you know. And I used to work in watercolor, but I was never very proficient in it. And so I'm not a watercolorist. I only play one on TV. That's my joke. And because normally watercolorists will work more horizontal. You know, I want some drips to occur. I don't care if I get blossoms. I don't, you know, I mean, am I saving the white of the paper? Maybe, maybe not, you know, the way you would if you were really doing a watercolor. Because, oh, someone wants to come in. See waiting room. Here we go. Admit. Okay, Dick. Hi, Dick. Let's see.
Karen, you're muted.
Am I better? Yes? Okay. Okay, so I was saying, oh, the watercolor. So let me just show you quickly, and I'm not going to watercolor the whole thing because it takes a little more time, and I just want to show you some of the process of using the watercolor for getting the paper ready for pastel. Again, it's sanded paper. Again, I've taped it so that it doesn't buckle. The smaller pieces don't buckle as much. These two papers that I mentioned, they don't buckle at all. This is being recorded, by the way, Dick. You came in late, so if you missed something, you can pick it up on the recording. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. Here's my reference. And what I do is, you know, and watercolors, right? I think they start light to dark, but I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm laying in my darks first. I wanna know where my dark values are. So let's see, I'm picking up some dioxazine purple here. And I don't want it too watery because I want it to be pretty dark. Now in this drawing, I'm pretending there's a window here. Okay, so I know that I want my dark to be here, you know. I mean, this is different than the one it's gonna be, like, I hope I'm not confusing you. It's gonna be the same photograph, but I have a different design because I thought, why make the same painting twice? Why not make up stuff, you know? So, you know, I laid in some dioxazine purple, but into that, and I'm pretty saturated here, you know, I'm not using a lot of water. You know, I'm just putting in a shape here. I think my composition is going to end like right around here. I've got extra paper to the right of me. I just didn't bother cutting this. So I'll set my background because, you know, I want to know what's happening through the glass. You know, there's a lemon there. I don't know if you can tell. And I've painted this before. I used a different design. So if that's going to be a window, for instance, I'm going to go towards blue, pretending there's blue sky, but I'm going to keep it like dark. I'm going to pretend it's like nighttime, like the way it is out there now. But I don't want it quite as dark as this. So I'm going to add a little more water and I'll pull it through. And I'll use, when I'm doing this for real, like in my, you know, in my spare time in my studio, when I'm painting for me, like I'll play around and add other colors of the same value besides, like here's some cobalt. Let's see what happens. I don't know, just like I'll insert it in so that it's not just right from the tube. Maybe I'll go cobalt and a light lavender, or not lavender, sorry, like a periwinkle on this side. This is a little more opaque, this color. It's interesting. And I'm, you know, kind of laying in around my shapes. And let's see. And I don't want there to be a big difference between foreground and background. And I know that the shadow being cast is going to have some heft to it as far as value, how dark it is. So I'm mixing the blues and the purples, and and listen, when you're doing this, what's fun about it is I just use like I think this is like a phthalo green. It's got more, it's a green blue. If you don't get the value right when you're doing this, it makes no difference, because guess what? You're going to be covering it with pastel anyway. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And because I'm demoing, I'm putting it in much more perfect than I would if I was, playing with this on my own. I want the shadow of the flowers perhaps to be cast like the shape of, maybe I'll pull it like this. I don't know, I'm making it up. Not sure what I want to do with the foreground yet. Maybe I'll address that after. But whatever I do with the foreground has to go through the glass, because that's see-through glass. I mean, there's some stems coming through. All right, so you know what? I'm going to keep it simple. And I'm going to add a little violet to that light blue that I just did. I know you can't really see my palette. Oops, that's okay. It came out gray. That's all right. And I'm going to make sure there's a lot of water on my brush, because I want this to be somewhat lighter than my background. Watercolor dries lighter, right? So this is a little warmer. It became like I picked up by accident a little yellow ochre, and you know what? That was a happy accident. It was a good thing, like that. Okay, and I'm going to pull it right through that mixture, kind of right through. I know I like the dark pattern in here, so I'm going to keep that dark. All right, so there's the vase, more or less. I have to go back to this blue, so I'm going to dry my brush a little bit so I don't have as much water on it. And this is pretty dark, and we're also seeing, I'm going to make it local color green, because I know that there's a real dark green in here. Sometimes when I'm doing a landscape and I'm using the watercolor first to prepare the paper for the pastel, if there's green grass and it's a sunny day, I'm going to use orange. I'll either use like a burnt sienna, or I'll use magenta. I mean, I'll go crazy, because in my mind, then when I put the green down, the green isn't as bottle green. It doesn't look like as obnoxious as it would, if I just put green down on white paper. Pastel green is very vibrant, and it looks unnatural sometimes. So, I sometimes use the complement, and that's a good example of when I'll use the complementary color. I probably can pull this to a little bit darker in here. Wow, that's a little too dark, but you know what? Better dark than light, because I can always go, that's the thing, you can always go lighter with pastel. That's probably a little too dark too. So, and like I said, sometimes my watercolor paintings, when I'm ready to pastel it, and like I'll put it up on Facebook, and people will say, don't use the pastel on it. The watercolor looks so good. And I do, and sometimes I wreck it. And sometimes, my underpaintings look horrible and ugly. And either way, it doesn't matter. I've never left just the watercolor. I'm always like challenging myself. I don't want a hard edge there. So obviously I would continue the background, but I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I do next. I'm still working my darks. I'm going to go right into the floral flowers because then when you look at the dry piece, you'll understand how I got there. That's why I'm kind of doing this. So I want to go in with some dark reds. So I'm using alizarin, permanent alizarin. I'm still going to add a little blue to that because I want to really make it dark and cool. I'm using my brush like sideways because I'm really looking to get the gesture of some of these flowers, I like connecting the colors, let's see, I have a red here. So see, I'm staying with my darks, even though now it's red, but the value is pretty dark. And then there's some other dark colored flowers through here. As you can see, I'll mark my centers. The centers of those flowers happen to be dark, medium, not too dark, not too light. They have a green cast to them. So I just mixed a little yellow ochre and a little turquoise. And let's see if that's a good value. Add a little water because that's going to lighten it. There's a center. I'm just finding my center so I don't get lost when I go to create this. This is not what I'm painting today. You know, this is just to show you how I watercolor. There's those beautiful purple flowers I showed you. Remember those that I held up at the beginning of this? Got to clean my water. I can pull them. Let me pull them over again for people that missed, just real quick. So, you know, I just love, these were not in the original floral arrangement, but I'm in love with them. So I'm going to try to insert them. I did in the other, you'll see in the other watercolor, like if I can get them. And I'm using, now this is some other purple I have. I forget what it's called. It's not the dioxazine. It might be, oh, I know. It's, gosh, I don't know, it slipped my mind now what it is. So I'm going to add the red to that purple. You know, there we go. This is a nice reddish, more, you know, has more red, but it's towards blue, and that might work. Yeah. And I'm just filling in, I'm connecting my shapes. I'm going to let it dry. You know, I'm going to let it kind of do its thing. The rest are the white flowers, okay, or a lot of this is white. I love white flowers because I like not using white. And actually, it's most of this photograph, the flowers are in shadow, and there's only whites where I want to, you know, where I'm going to clip the whites. I call it clipping the whites. Oh, I got a drip here, and that's fine. You can use a paper towel, or sometimes my flamingo paintings, I really let everything drip because I wanted it to feel like the birds were in the rain. And sometimes I'll pastel on top of this once it dries. And if there's a section of the watercolor that I went, wow, I did a good job, I'll leave that section. I don't have to cover every surface with the pastel. But sometimes I cover the whole thing, you know, it just depends. To put you know, the way and you'll see when I did this, I just gray out, I take a section of a color, like this is the red I just used, like here. And I'm going to put the complement to gray out this red. So I need some kind of greeny, let's see if I like that. I added like this kind of ochre green. I'll add a little bit of blue to cool it a little more. There we go, I'm getting there. Add a little more, ooh, well, that's like turquoisey. That might work actually. You know, I kind of go by feel. So now I've got this kind of grayed out section, you know, grayed out puddle. See how gray it is? It's not saturated like the rest. And the reason for that is I want to show the flowers that are in shadow. So I'm going to pretend this one is pretty shadows. So I'm going to really hit this dark. You know, when I do it for real, I look to get the gesture of the flower. Maybe this one is my star, you know, it's going to be a little, it's larger, and it's kind of going to be the flower that's going to be more saturated when I go to actually pastel on it. So here I'm pulling in here, and, you know, I'll go around and look for areas, but I might leave some of the white of the paper so that I can really get a crisp. Then the bottom of the flower, there's some shadow. And obviously I would continue the background. I might tone some of this a little bit. I might change the tone of this and warm it up again. So let's see, I'm going to go in with my ochre, a little bit of whatever this ochre is, and warm. This is still gray, but maybe I'm going to pull it towards a warm and let it drip. And then at the end, after I kind of do that, if you see how there's like holes, you can leave that, or you can tone. You know, I can just take let me take a clean brush and clean water, ostensibly clean water, and I pull the pigment through. I have a lemon here. I would probably tone that down here. You'll see when I pull up this other thing. So now I'm going to be like Julia Childs, okay? Because I really want to get to the pastel. But you'll see, that's what I did here. Other watercolor. While I'm doing this, any questions? You can unmute if you want to ask the question. Feel free to unmute yourself. And so this is what I did, this morning, because I wanted it to dry. It takes, I don't know how long. It depends how wet. See here I did on all 4 sides, I taped it. It's a little different paper. It's white and it's a different brand. It's called Luxe. It's a little smoother than the other paper, but it's still gritty. You'll hear me scratching when I use pastel. I left some of the whites. The way to tell if it's dry or not, see this light, this is a little too light. I should have made that value a little darker, but it's okay for now, is to take the back of your clean hand, and if it feels cold, then it's not dry yet. You don't want to pastel on it till it doesn't feel cold. This is purely dry. It's been drying all day. So now get rid of my waters because I don't want to spill any water on my pastels.
What kind of pastels are you using tonight?
Okay, well, I'll kind of show you. I can move the camera and show you what my palette looks like. I haven't ever met a pastel I didn't like. I like every brand, but every brand has, sometimes you have the perfect color, but it's too soft and it's too mushy for the time, for the part of the painting you're at. So you need a harder version of that color. Sometimes it's the perfect color, but you don't have a sharp edge. You need a skinny edge. So I have like a large collection. I use an assortment is the short answer. And generally I use these are called Blue Earth. They're made by a company called Dakota. I particularly love this gray. It's a gray set. There's 2 of them. And they're my go-tos because, I have it. Let me show you this way. So, they go from light to dark and warm to cool. And they all look like, sometimes you go, wow, they all look the same. They're not, it's the light, and even with my own eye, once I put it on the paper, you can see the value shifts, so this is an easy way to go, oh, I need that version of gray, and now here it is lighter, so it's a quick way to get your a value shift. So I use that. I'll show you some other ones. I use Unison. I use Great Americans, which are square, and they kind of here. I have a whole box too, but this is. And these are the tints of the tone of these red tones, Let's see. I like Terry Ludwig's a lot. They're also square and large. These are the dark set, which is very tattered because I've had it for years. I mean, pastels are expensive, but once you buy the box, unless you drop them, you have them for years and years and years. I mean, you just don't use up as much. I have way more pastels than I'll ever need. I'm a little bit of a junkie that way. It's my, okay, so like here's a start of a collection of all different, and each one, they're different shapes. Then there's the hard version. I mean, the general category is soft pastel, but there's ranges of how soft is soft. Sennelier is another brand that I love, and they come in different shapes. This shape has paper, but there's Senneliers. I probably have some in my box that are half sticks and they don't have the paper on them. I mostly hate the paper. I usually end up peeling the paper. I don't usually use Rembrandts, but the new pastels are, they're inexpensive. And those are the ones that if I'm gonna do the underpainting, like for instance, if I wanted to get the dark on the white paper here, I might lightly use the hard, inexpensive pastel and then use the rubbing alcohol to melt it, because why would I want to melt, with the alcohol, the expensive stuff? I want to use the inexpensive stuff, but I go back and forth. I mean, there are people who say you have to start with the hard and then go to the soft. I mean, maybe that's so, but I don't really follow any rules. If I have the right color, I don't care if it's hard or soft, I put it down. I don't blend a lot with my fingers until the end, and sometimes I never blend. But when I do blend, if it's not with my fingers, I will use a hard pastel to add pigment to an area to smooth a transition. Like if I don't want a sharp edge, I might find like the perfect color to bridge that sharp edge. I want to find, you know, my goal is always to find lost and found edges in a piece. But I like my eye gravitates to paintings that have a wide range from a number 1, which is like white, you know, like up here, to you know, to an 8 or a 10, you know, very dark. I like a wide range. I mean, there are artists that work in a smaller range, like they're quieter paintings. I mean, I sometimes do a quiet painting, but generally I like the spread. The one thing, and I know you've all used pastel, but I mean, this is an interesting example. Here, let me just come over here, and then I'll start the painting, but I want to show you this. So this is just a piece of old watercolor paper, but I just want to show you a fun trick. So I'll take any color. Let me grab a color here. And this is a hard pastel, and I'm gonna put this down. See that swatch of purple, right? And let's see, can you see? Yes, you can see if I'm here. You see how it's the same stick, and it looks entirely different between here and here, the color. Because when you put the same color on a light ground, you know, first of all, the white paper shows through a little bit. And the surround, the eye sees this at same color as darker, whereas when you go with black paper, you know, your colors get lighter. So here's a yellow, okay? It's a very light yellow, right? I don't know if you can see, it's not white. But when I put it down here, you know, maybe you can see some of the chroma, but look, the value's close to white, right? But when I put it here, it looks so much whiter because you know, it's on black. So that's something to always, this happens to be a Sennelier, a half stick, by the way. So it's just good in your mind to know how dark is, when I pick up a pastel, I ask myself, like, because people say, how do you get the right colors? Well, you ask yourself 3 questions. What is the value of the color? It's not even the hue that matters, you know, it's how dark or light the color is. Then how saturated is that color? Because, you know, you've got colors in pastel that are like crazy saturated, right? Look at that. And then this is also a red, and it's in the same family, but look how less saturated. And then I can find another one, you know, like here. Well, let's see. Probably don't have a great example right here, but oh, here, this might work. No, that's not going to work. Here. So like, here's another one, you know? And so, you know, obviously that's a darker value, and maybe these two are the same value. And how do you tell value? How do you know? Here's another quick lesson. So I go like this, right? It's very dark. I make like a swatch. So if I add this to that patch, it's more saturated, but when I squint, it doesn't pop out. So it's the same value. This is the same value as this. It just looks lighter because it's more chromatic. See, it has more saturation, but they're the exact same value. But this one, well, it's not that much darker, but it is darker, this one. So, you know, that's how I tell, you know, so I say, is it the right value? How saturated is it? And then lastly, okay, is it the right chroma for what I need? That's clear. This one is clearly a lighter. It's popping from the patch. And then this one is lighter still. This is like an orange that's, you know, lighter. So that's my test. That's how I tell if I have the right color, the right value. All right, now I better get started because what time are we at? Oh, it's 7. Okay, I think we're going to, is it 8:30? Is that right? Or 8? Anybody know? I forget what it was. Well, I guess, you know, till you get sick of me. You can let me know at some point. All right, so what I do when I get started, after I do my underpainting, I attack the darks first. And, you know, I have to establish like how dark do I want my darkest dark to be? So, and then where is the light coming from? That's the other question. I'm going to say the light's coming from here, because maybe it's coming from here because we've got this shadow of the vase kicking off, which I find that dramatic. I want to keep that. And then where's my lightest lights? Well, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's blown out on this black and white print of the colored photograph, but that's the lightest light in addition to some of the clips of the white flowers. That's where my lights are. But I put the lights on last. I tend to go to the darks first. So I'm going to start pulling some dark, rich dark pastels here. I'm using some of these Terry Ludwigs. I'm going to use some of the Senneliers. You can type questions, by the way, in the chat section at the very bottom. And you know, I think it's, what was the gentleman's name? Walter, I think is, right? What is it, Walter, that's going to monitor and like read it out loud if someone wants to ask a question as I go. The new pastels, the inexpensive ones. Oh, by the way, I very rarely use black, but there are 3 new pastels. Their colors are cordovan, bottle green, and spruce blue. When you mix those 3 darks, you get a beautiful black, you know, so you can spend a lot of money on, you know, beautiful Terry Ludwig darks. But when I mix these 3, I get a pretty nice, you know, a combination of a very pretty dark. And I can, if I use a little more of the cordovan, which is a red, it will, it'll be warmer, obviously. And if I start, like, I'm gonna not just use one color. This is the bottle green on top. And I could have started with the Terry Ludwigs as well, but I want to see, you know I want right in here, I want it to be fairly dark. So let's see. But I think I want it to be warm dark. I can always change it later. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm using the broad side of the pastel. And, you know, I'm moving away from like this blue. You know, blue in a painting can really dominate in a way that takes over sometimes too much. So it's something just to note, you know, when you do a bright blue sky, it can wreck your painting. Sometimes it's really hard to pull off a bright blue sky. You have to really mix other colors in with it. See, I added a little of that green, bottle green. I don't know if you can see the nuances. Like, unfortunately, Zoom was not made for artists, you know, so the, I mean, I'll bring the camera up. I'll take photographs to remind me, Walter, if you can, at a certain point, just tell me, say, oh, take a progress shot. So that, because then when I can send it to Marjorie and she can email it to everyone and you can blow it up and say, oh, okay, I see what she was doing there. I mean, I can move my computer closer, but, you know, I can do that, but I still think, you know, the photograph's going to show you a lot. And that's what I do when I teach online with the workshops. And for my students, I do it in the moment, but you know, this is a demo, so I'm not going to do it. But I'll take, like, at this point, I just added a little dark here. I kind of like what's going on up here, so I'm going to leave for now. Oops, I'm going to leave it for now. Okay, so I still want to go towards my darks. I even like my watercolor through here. I like the value, and it's towards green, and I can pull out stems later. So I'm not going to touch that right now. I'm going to head towards my dark centers, or the dark center. And it's a warm dark. You know, it's when I talk about warm and cool, it's always relative. It's always as compared to. So the center is going to be warmer than the blue, you know. So if it's even towards green, you know, green has yellow in it and yellow is warm. So then I'll say this is warmer than that in my head. That's the language I use so as not to get confused by color. Because color is very confusing, and that's why I rather work. I mean, I have a color print, but, and I'll show you, this is interesting at the, well, maybe I should show you now. I'll show you at the end, but I did this painting tiny, different design from, I didn't look at the color at all. I couldn't even find the color photo. And after I did it, and then I found the color photo and I went, oh my goodness, these were yellow flowers. But I didn't, you'll see it, I'll do it now, I'll show you. This is the little tiny study I did, okay? And it's off, I mean, but I painted from this, and I kind of liked how it turned out. But the funny thing is, you know, these, I swear, because I have the color photograph, these are yellow flowers. And so this time I thought, all right, let me see what happens if I use yellow flowers here, because that'll balance the yellow of the lemon. So we'll see. But just sometimes I just find if you're going to work from a photo, working from a grayscale is a good idea, because then you're not married to your colors, and the printer is going to distort everything anyway. So remember I said how I was like really loving these dark, loving these dark flowers. Did someone say something? Or okay, so let's see. I'm testing. Okay, good. This is darker than a little bit darker than my underpainting. I'm using the side of the pastel. I'm pressing lightly. I'm kind of mimicking the shape or the feeling of the flower. This flower happens, but I don't know what they're called, but they're unusual. And they happen to have a brighter section, like more chromatic down at their base, you know. So let's see, I'm gonna see if I can pull that out, because I like that. You know, if you like a detail, then by all means, use it. So I'm looking for like a dark purple that has a little more red. And if I don't have that color, I picked up this. So this was the one I just hit the underpainting with, and now I'm going to this because I want to show the character. I heard a noise. Is someone trying to come on, or is that a participant? No, maybe somebody left or something. I don't know what that was. Okay.
Dick Botlin left.
Oh, okay. Okay, so see, you know, I don't know, hopefully you can see how I've brightened up the bottom, you know, it's subtle. And we'll see. I don't know, I don't finish one area. I work all the way around the painting, because if I start from the top and go down, then I am marrying myself to my decisions. And at this stage, I can change everything and anything. I mean, pastel is very easy to correct, which is a blessing and a curse. The curse is that you almost never know when you're finished because you can keep changing things. And the blessing is that you can make it better. And I'm looking for my brush. Oh, here it is. It's like a makeup brush. And if I have a section, I don't yet have a section that I have too much, but if you have a section with too much pastel, and like, for instance, if I went like too hard, hit the with, you know, the pressure is everything. If I press too hard and I want to let the tooth up, I can just like very lightly brush. I don't use an eraser. I just lightly brush that area. I let the dust fall, and then I can go back and refresh that area. Like I just used a kind of brighter purple under here, you know, and I can keep on making decisions and changing my decisions as I go along. All right, so back to this, I'm back to the centers of the flower. I'm looking for like a green ochre kind of color. I see, I have it right here. This might work. I'm gonna hold up what I'm choosing. So the other trick with pastel is make sure you're working with clean pastels. It's like working with a dirty brush. You wouldn't want to work with a dirty. These are the two colors from my box. Oh, let me show you my box. It's right here. I can aim this down. You see, I also have this wooden box with like selection of colors by hue and value. There it is. You can kind of see it. Okay, now I'm going to put it back to this. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to make a test. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good color. It's a kind of grayed out ochre green. You know, one of the things about daisies I know is the centers, they're not perfectly round because the lighter part of it fits into the circle. So you don't have to paint every piece of the flower or every petal, but if you observe the flower from life, you can kind of see those little bit of nuances that that will help, you know, to give it the character. Let's see if that's going to work. This is like a lilac, which might be very nice. I have kind of this reddish. I just want to I'm going to just show you a little bit, like I'm pushing the petals into the circle. Oops, that's going to stay light in there. But, you know, and I chose a cooler color here. And maybe that's going to work and maybe it won't. Maybe I want to go lighter. I mean, not lighter, warmer. So I can still do that. I can warm that up a little bit. Okay, so now go back. What did I do with that? Oh, it's good to leave your sticks out. I just want to note where my this one is a little bit lighter. I'm just doing my kind of darker centers so I don't get lost in my painting. Now I'm going to put some towards red, we'll call it dark towards red flowers. I want them to be different than these. I want it to be towards red and pretty dark. So let's see. The flower gets a little lighter in this passage. So instead of using that same color, I'm going to find a stick that's slightly brighter. Maybe not by that much. There we go. I'll worry about my edges later. By edges, I mean how sharp, how sharp the definition of each detail is. The devil's in the detail. And with flowers, you're always better off, in my mind, keeping it loose because, unless you want to do a botanical study, which I'm never interested. I don't have that kind of patience. I'll give that flower a center. Okay, so now I'm going to start to address the grays that are in here. Oh, I've got these. Let me put these in too. There's these like little green ball flowers. There's those. They're kind of I don't know. They're like a yellow green and a little more chromatic than any of these centers. I don't know if that's going to work. It might. And they're not all one tone, but for now I'm going to leave them one tone. I'll form it later because the light's coming this way. So you see I had this stick. It's a little chip. Now I want to find something a little lighter. This one is lighter, clearly, and it's also a little more chromatic. Will it work? I don't know yet. And I won't even, yeah, I like that. I'll take a picture at this point so that then you can see why I might have chose that. But that helps to give, a little definition, a little character to this flower. I'm kind of looking at the photo and saying like, where is the light hitting? I kind of am dotting across it. I'm not even pressing hard. Sometimes I will press hard if I really want to make a statement and a sharp edge. The harder you press, the same stick will appear darker than if you use the same stick in a lighter, with a lighter touch. Where's my phone? Oh, it's right here. Okay, let's see. Take a picture. Okay, and then, I'll get a little closer so you can see those flowers. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the white flowers. They're not really white. I'm using the inverted. And I'm going to keep those in the gray kind of family. So I will start using my gray set here. And I have other grays that I will use. I have a bunch over here. They happen to be Rembrandt brand. They're grays. Grays are really funny. I mean, grays can make you crazy. I'll show you here. This is my section in my box of the grays. Let's see, how do I do this with the camera? Oh, it's gonna make you guys nauseous. But you see next to the greens, you see all those grays? They're colors, actually. They're actually colors, but they're gray in comparison to all the other chroma. So for instance, oops, let me come back to reality. So that's a gray, but what color gray? We don't know. I mean, okay, it's not warm because it doesn't look red. It looks blue-ish. It is nice to have a piece of paper here to test. Yeah, that's kind of a blue, that's kind of a green gray. Oh, look at this. This one is much more purple. This one is clearly a warm red gray, right? So I actually want to use that in here. That's what I was looking for before. So, this is very close to the watercolor, actually. These flowers are sitting behind. So now I have to pull these in value a little darker than here. The ones that are in this section are sitting lower than this one that wants to come forward. I'm not worrying about individual petals. I'm looking at very big shapes right now, just the big shapes. This is supposed to be negative space in there, but okay. And I'm going to go a little bit cooler in here. So now this is a gray that has a little more blue, and I'm pulling this just up to that section. It'll give it a little depth if I do that. It's giving these flowers hopefully a little more, you know, a little more depth. I don't know how else to describe it. You know, being an artist, we're visual, you know, right? The words are hard. It's hard to describe things. I'm always searching for the word, but you know, I can find the color. That's easy. That's the easy part. It's describing the word, and it's all perception. You know, it's all my idea of cool and warm is going to be different than any other artist. You know, I think I want to stay warm up in here, so I'm using a warmer gray, and I'm glazing lightly because I'm liking my watercolor painting. You know, in this one, like I'm trying not to kill it. I probably will kill this, knowing me. Let's see. Okay. So once I get to a certain point, then I will, at a certain point, I'm going to want to pull out and clip the lights so that you can see some petals, but not all of them. So I'm gradually moving my gray selection towards light, but I'm still not anywhere near using white at this point. I may decide never to use the white, or I may in fact pull out some yellows and whites, and you know, I'm looking to mimic kind of what I'm seeing, you know, the gesture of the flower without, you know, describing that's too dark. You know, I'm comparing. Oop, that's still too dark, so I have to keep inching to the next lighter. There we go. That's a little better. And I like that little bit of violet. So I have this like purple gray here. And I look at negative space a lot also. And if the negative space, regardless of the photograph, is not pleasing, I'm gonna make it hopefully a more pleasing negative space. Does that make sense? I hope, you know, if I'm looking at, well, gee, that's not interesting looking. This is one big blob. You know, maybe I want some detail in here, and maybe I don't want too much detail. We'll see. You know, I make decisions, but I don't make big decisions really at this stage. All right, now I want to get to the vase. I'm not ready to address the lights yet. I just want to make sure I got, and I want to, you know, when you're painting a landscape and you have leaves on a tree, we call those sky holes, right? Tree holes or sky holes. And there's some sky holes in this arrangement. I'd like to have the sense of some of this coming, you know, showing through in between in little peaks where the flowers are separated. So that's tricky because I have to find the color that won't pull the eye there, but will go with this background. So I just quickly looked in my box and I can already see, and that's a nice negative space in there. And tree holes are darker than the sky itself because you have all the leaves, you know, covering that little white piece of sky punching through. So that would be the same, you know, principle, I think, here. That's why there's a dark there. That's part of this background. You know, I don't want to overplay it. I'm not going to put too many in, but I do feel like it'll add to the unity, to unify this. Now I've used this pastel and it is like kind of almost got a little blue-green in it. So what happens? Oh, I like that. I'm liking how that looks. That's kind of pretty. And, you know, I'm glazing over and I want to kind of unify some of this, you know, because I'm really interested in the light. I'm interested in how the light's going to fall to make this cohesive, you know. So back to, now I'm going to work my foreground. It's the thing and you know, I found this color. I'm going to keep it aside. It's a trick with pastel. Sometimes if you throw it back in the box, it takes you hours to find, what was it that I used, you know? So let's see. Yeah, you know what, too, this time I want to try to see what happens if I turn these now to yellow flowers. Remember I said there were a few. I think I'm going to make these three, give them some chroma, because I want to make this painting different than the one I showed you. So I put the grays down, and that's not a bad thing, because now I have the liberty to use some really nice chroma on top of the gray. See this yellow? I'm not sure, but let's see what happens if I do this. This is a little scary. Oh yeah, no, that's going to be nice, because it's yellow in shadow. You know, this is a flower in shadow. So I already have a gray mixture of watercolor. I've got, you know, some gray pastel that I used. I'm going to leave some of that gray, but I'm insinuating that this flower is now towards yellow. And then I'm going to find this yellow. And yellows are tricky because some yellows have too much blue in them, and then, you know, that makes them towards green, and we want to be careful. But this is clearly almost a cad yellow, right? And this one is okay because it's not so blue, but I'll show you an example of something I wouldn't use. This one has so much more blue in it that I'll stay away for this painting. You know, it's just not, I just from experience know it could give you a fit. So there are some petals that are layered and showing some light. So, you know, I usually leave the lights for last, but just so I can have some eye candy and get you guys excited, hopefully, about, and then there's like a little clip there. And for now, I'm going to leave that. And right now, I'm okay with this. I like this. I want to go back to, oops, that's the wrong one. I just want to close this space down. It grew. You know, sometimes spaces will grow. So you can see how I can make that a little bit smaller. It's kind of better. So now I'm going to use the same yellow like here, you know, but now that I did that, I want to pull the center of this flower a little towards green and a little cooler, a little darker, so that it stands out, right? And now I'm going to glaze over. This is more of a desaturated, but not as gray as I originally used. Comparatively, there's some chroma. So what did I say? We got 1, 2, and this one is really in shadow. So I'm going to stick with that. Whatever I used up here, here was the stick again, compared to, you see the difference? Wow, right? Really chromatic. This one's just lighter and tinted. You know, these two probably have a similar pigment, but this one added white. You know, I sometimes will pick up a stick, and if I don't know, like there are colors, I look at them, I go, what the heck is this color? You really don't know, like, what is that? Like, what is it? So, you know, I'll look at it and I'll go, well, there's definitely a little black in it and a little white, but more black. And let's see, so it's leaning towards a green. So it's got blue and yellow, but it's definitely got more blue, you know? So, and it's a gray because grays have all the primaries in them. So it just helps me to, because grays can become really confusing, you know? And so I'm going to use this unknown color. I'm using it for the center here. But, you know, color is just the most interesting thing to me, like how it's really like a chemistry almost. So here I'm pulling out some flower shape. I don't know, I kind of lost my way a little bit, but it's fine. And so, okay, so now I'm happier with that. Okay, at least I just want to show the petal kind of jumping up here, and it's even doing this. And there is a little bit of light, so I'll pull it through here just a little bit, but that one's clearly in shadow. And the rest are white flowers. I want to keep them that way. And maybe I'll punch up some of the blues, lavenders. I'm gonna use some, insinuate some flower here. I like the idea of the purple in there. Okay, and now I'm going to come down towards the vase because that's still too light. You know, it's disappearing. there's a water line, you know, it's kind of fun. I love to kind of insinuate the water line. I might want to play with this lemon because already I've chosen my yellow. So why don't I do that before I move on? I'm sorry if I'm, what's the word? I'm kind of like ADD, I'm everywhere, right? So this side of the lemon is not so chromatic, it's dark. I'm not making it yellow, I'm making it kind of yellow-green. And then I'll layer it, I'll brighten it up a little bit through here. I'm keeping it simple, I'm keeping the shapes, you know, one big shape, and then I use that same yellow. And I can play up the detail through here if I want. I probably need to make that a little bit whiter, lighter. So I'll go, you know, the rind is always a little lighter through there. And I don't want it to be harsh, so I'll rub it a little bit. And now I have to go to my foreground and my vase, you know, which is glass. And, you know, glass reflects what's in it, and it also, not reflects, it shows what's inside, but it also shows the environment. Like, you know, if this glass were empty, this background would be what you see. There's some green leaves, or not leaves, but stems coming through. So you see them more as they're closer to the front of the vase, and then you lose it with the refraction of the water and all that. So I'm going to look towards using some blues. I'm going to test. This is this little chip is kind of ultramarine, and it's not really in the family that I have here, so it's making me uncomfortable. I don't want to use that. I don't want to go towards ultramarine, so I want a blue that is not quite as purple, you know, that has less red. I want a blue that has less red. That's what's in my head. So what do we have? I mean, we could try like a cobalt. I don't have a great selection of blues. Let's see. Why am I going with blue? I'm not even sure, but that's less purple anyway. I used the green here, like in the watercolor, because I know the lemon's showing through. So I wanted to insinuate that warmth through there. And that's better value anyway, but it needs to go darker. It's not dark enough. So let's see what I can do. This might be better. That's much better. It all comes down to value, really. It's like if you can get that right, everything else really doesn't matter much. I want to see what happens with this. This is a green. Oh, this is a fun, look at this. That's a big fat pastel. It's made by Richardson. They sell these in sets, these big ones, and they're hard to draw with, but they're great for covering an area. And when I'm doing a landscape, it's hard to find a dark, warm green, and that's what this is. Because this kind of green, cold, is easier. You know, it's much darker too. It's a cold green. But I don't want my darks to get that dark. I don't want them to go any darker than that inside the flower. But I'll show you, like, this is how I might pull a stem. I don't draw stems like with a stick. I try to remember to go across. You know, the stem is a three-dimensional object, except I don't want it there. Here, I want one here. So, you know, I'm using a warmer version, and I'll you know, insinuate just some of them coming this way. And then I might lighten a piece of it. It doesn't have to be continuous all the way through. You can break it up, you know. I just feel that I don't want it to be too, you know, sticky and straight. That makes sense. I don't want the stick to be too sticky. So I'm using the same green through here. I'll filter it through a little bit, but I don't want to hit it too hard. I still like that back to that blue, so I'll cover that over. The vase, it gets pretty dark down here, and now I'll be ready to look at the background. So, you know, I'm happy with that. I'm going to glaze on top, GL glaze. Sometimes I say that and people don't know what I'm talking about. What's fun is if there's yellow or warmth, the glass might pick some of that up, some of that warmth. So the value has to be right. That's pretty good. It's matching my plan. So I'm going to insert a little chroma through here. You know, maybe that's overkill. I can always dull it down. You know, you can dull down something too chromatic by adding its complement or by adding a gray on top of it. I tend to, when I get started, I over exaggerate the darks because I can always go lighter. I over exaggerate the chroma because I can always kill the chroma. And, you know, I keep the edges sharp. I can always soften them. Once you rub, it's a little harder to unrub, you know. But I have a lot of sharp edges here, so I have to do a lot of work. I probably won't finish this. I usually never finish my demos. I hope you're not going to be very disappointed because I rather teach. I could stop talking and finish it, but I like to keep teaching as I'm talking. I'm going to cool this. I'm using a blue that has less green in it because I want to feel the sense of a, you know, cast shadow here. I don't necessarily want to define too much of the bottom of the vase, but I'll just a few pieces because it's cut glass. My aunt, she passed away, you know, years ago, but it was a gift from her, this vase, and you know, I always think of her when I use it. So, you know, I like that the shadow's fading away. Wow. Sometimes, you know, it's funny when the watercolor painting is a little more successful, and I did spend, you know, because I knew I was demoing, so I really was careful and I spent a lot of time. It makes it harder to pastel. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's almost like when you have a really beautiful sunset photograph, you're going to have a harder time making a good painting because it's so good. So like my watercolor, for me, you know, the way I watercolor is fairly successful. I wish it was messier because when I do better when my watercolor is, you know, my watercolor underpaintings are a little less successful. You know, when they're really messy. I can show you one. I'll show you one. It's funny. This is a really messy one. And I'm excited to paint it, but I was too scared to paint it for you guys. But look at this. This is let's go this way. I don't even know which way it goes. Oh, it goes this way. Okay, I don't even know if you guys know what this is, but it's basically a whole bunch of flowers in pots in a flower market, like on shelves, you know? And that's my underpainting. That's watercolor. And look how messy it is. And I'm going to have a lot of fun pasteling on this because I can rein it in, you know, or not. I mean, it's, you know, I might keep it very abstract, but this watercolor underpainting was a little tight. So I'm like, oh, how am I going to, you know, it's like I'm a little precious about it. It's interesting from a psychological standpoint. I know I have to lighten a little bit, the value. It should be the same value through here. And maybe that is too chromatic right there. So I'm going to throw, you know, purple and yellow are complements. So I just tickled a little purple on top to unify. Otherwise that's going to look too crazy, like yellow, like I was trying too hard, you know. It's a good thing I amused myself, right? Now I'm going to, you know, same, I'm using a little bit of yellow orange. It's a little different than what I use there for the facets of the cut glass. And let's see. Oh, that's not light enough. So, you know, sometimes I make a little mark and I say, oh, is that okay? Yeah, that should be okay. I'm going a little towards light in some areas. I want it to feel like glass, you know? So, and it does catch the light, a little differently. Okay, so I'm okay with that. Now,
Karen, could you bring the computer a little bit closer?
Sure.
So we could see a little of the detail.
Yeah, and I'll take a picture again, and then you'll get to see. But I know sometimes it's subtle, you know. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And I know, I wish, like, I don't have a Zoom on this, you know, but even, I mean, if you were watching me in a room, you wouldn't be any closer than this. It would be, you know, if I was live, there'd be chairs and you wouldn't really be closer. You'd be able to come up later and see. And I can probably make the center of this flower, I can bring it towards dark a little bit. So I'm going to punch that up a little. It needs a little strength. You know, I backed away and decided, yeah, that needs some strength in there. Change its shape a little bit. You know, you want to make sure when you're painting a group of flowers, they're not all the same size. I mean, these three might be too much the same. I might reduce this one very easy to do with pastel. Like if you got, I got a little too, let's say I got a little too, oh, I don't like that blue, but this one, if I got a little too large, I can use the negative space and see what I mean about blue. Blue can overpower. That one's, that's a better, it's grayer and a little better. But see, I can make that a little bit smaller now. See that? Yeah, I kind of like that even there. I lighten that background so it's not so dark. Let's see, foreground. What am I going to do here? I like this transition here. I don't know. This is like kind of light coming through. Maybe I need to bring the value here up slightly, a little lighter than I have it. I'm going to keep it towards gray. I'm just glazing a gray on top. I don't want too much chroma because it's not the star of my show, you know, and I'm going to use that just to unify. I'm going to bring the computer up. I lightly, you see, can you guys see? I went over that really lightly. So it's a lot of it's touch and you can see the blue watercolor through the paper. I could cover it completely if I decided I hate the whole thing. I mean, that's why pastel can make you crazy sometimes also. And now, so let's see, I probably want to pull this tone through. I don't want this to be a sharp edge. When you have a sharp edge, the eye's going to go there. So you have to decide how important. I don't know the answer to that yet with this painting, like how important. But my guess is that I don't want this to overpower. I don't want this to be such a sharp dark against the light because I want you to kind of be here. I want you to be through here. I still have to play with the grays up in here. I haven't finished these flowers, which I want to get to next. I think I'm ready to go up there. So I'm going to keep it towards warm and light. So let's see. Look at this. This looks, it's like kind of like a, I don't know, it's got a lot of orange in it. I don't know how light it is. Oh, it's funny, there's cornmeal coming out of here because I use cornmeal to clean sometimes. Oh, and look at that. It's not that interesting. It's not as light. I'm putting it here, I'm going to put it on the white and look how much darker than the white it is. So it's too dark. It looks light, but on that paper it is not. So now I'm going to go towards using, this is that yellow that I used kind of in like in here. I used it a little bit. So I'm going to go right into this and I'm using yellow to show the whites in sunlight, you know, the whites of the flower in sunlight. And, you know, I'm grouping petals together. Flowers, you know, I never really liked painting flowers, but lately, and I have been, you know, doing a lot of flower paintings. I'm just loving it because, first of all, I can work from life and I can really observe. And after a while, you don't really need the flowers anymore. You know, if you look long enough, you can kind of get it. You know, you got to get the gesture, and it's just been a great way for me to keep learning, you know, and building my skills and see how well, there I went against what I said, but I'm putting in a strong directional stem, you know, and the stems might come through. So I'll follow it, you know, I'll follow the direction of the flower, and maybe, I don't know, there wouldn't really be light down here, but I'll, you know, maybe lighten this so it stands out a little bit, perhaps. Let's see. Now I think what I want to do is really pull, remember these green flowers here, I want to, you know, pull, I'm lightening them using a lighter green than I even originally used. I don't like the shape of that one. Fix that there. Let me take a picture at this point. And okay. And let's see, the detail on the glass. Okay, so I want to show you guys that thing. What I'll do, I either use a blue or some kind of purple-ish gray. So I'm looking for what I have that's not too chromatic. Oh yeah, this one might be nice. And what I do is I call it clipping the edges, but you know, it depends where you want to show an edge. I really don't want to show a sharp edge there, but maybe like right here. And what I'm doing is just kind of glazing over, because glass is, you know, even clear glass has a smoky quality to it. So let's see, it's smokier up to the waterline as it turns around the corner. And now that I did that, I'm seeing, yep, I have to go darker still. Funny how I'm kind of reluctant to go a little bit darker, but it needs that strength at the bottom. It just does, you know. And so, yeah, I'm liking that better, but I lost my waterline, but there we go. And I don't need it to be so defined, but maybe that's going to be good. And then in here, I will, sometimes if it's that you can't get there because you keep going, I can't get any darker, then that means the thing above it needs to, or next to it needs to go lighter. So sometimes to solve the problem, and that's in any medium, it's not necessarily that I had to make that darker, but maybe that had to go lighter. And maybe now this is too dark. So let me find a dark, dark gray. I want to tone this down a little bit. That's not going to work. It didn't change it. But this one, this tempers it a little bit, but not enough. I always say it's Goldilocks, you know, it's got to find, that's good. See how I'm like lifting the dark there? I just want to temper that so that it gradually comes down. And now this has to go, you know, it's like a little bit, you kind of push and pull. It's a push and a pull type of situation. Nope, I don't like that color. It's too blue. So I still want to keep these towards red, but I decided I want this edge to be dark. I just looked at my flowers over there and really want, those are really hard flowers to render because they're very, very subtle, you know, and I'm like a bull in a china shop. I mean, there we go. I think that's going to work. This is a cool, you know, I was in my mind, I'm saying, oh, they're warmer, but actually those little petals that sit at the bottom, it's like a little skirt. This flower has like a skirt to it. And I'm liking that. I'll take a picture. I'll bring the computer up and show you the difference, but oops, I changed the shape a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah. Here, let me bring this over to show you. I don't know if you can see it, but wait, it's hard to figure. There we go. So see how I got that difference from bottom to top of the dark flower. It just gives it a little bit of form. Little form. Okay. Let's see. So where am I? I feel like it's kind of mushy up in here and I need a little more definition. So maybe I want to lighten this and make it feel more like a white flower. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to pull, I just, you know, using a gray through here. I'm going to pretend there's one there and then there's another one. I don't know, break it up, break the space up a little better than I have it. That's better. And I'll give this a center. Sometimes I make stuff up as I go along, as you see, but this needs some kind of center there. That kind of reads better. And when you work this way, you know, you're going to lose your drawing. A lot of times I lose the drawing and then I find it again. You know, it's kind of a push and a pull back and forth. Where is that? And I want to see if I can pull these. No, I don't like that. I have to go, I'm going looking for like a real white now, which I have. So at the very, not end, but towards the end, here's my white set and they look all the same, but trust me, they're not. Some have like are tinted with a little pink, some are a little yellow, some have orange, and here we go. That's going to give me, I'm just going over that yellow. I really felt like it got too, I don't know, too chromatic or too yellow. I'm going to break some of the petals over the stem so it feels more organic. Oh, this is a white that has a lot of gray in it. It's also it's a good one to use for this. Let's see. Oops. Okay. Any questions? Anyone have any questions for me, or I'm gonna temper this a little bit. So I'm looking for, wish I could hold this and paint at the same time. I'm gonna see if I can do that. Let's see, I'm sorry for the turnaround here. So I wanted to show you what I do here. Like that's a sharp edge, right? And well, I gotta get the right color though. Let's see, what can I use through here? So I'm holding it up. That's still too light. Here, this will work. It's a little purple, but I can soften this edge. I'm using this, can you see it? It's like a gray purple, but it's clearly a little bit lighter than this dark shadow. And I can temper the edge. I'm lightening it a little bit and I'm tickling really gently, and warming it also a little bit. And also rubbing, but when you rub, you got to rub with clean fingers or you're going to have like a dirty area. So that's kind of the method, that's how now I want to, see, I went a little too light. I still want some dark in there. I just didn't want it on the edge. So I softened it because I used that pastel to soften, and I can do the same. Like I'm using this. Can you guys see? I hope I'm holding it. It's hard to paint and hold the computer.
Yes.
Yes,
But
we can.
you can see it, good. But see that? So like I clip the edge, but I don't want it to be outlined. So I'll kind of hatch it across. And this is a hard stick. This is what I meant by when I said in the beginning, sometimes I use these hard sticks to glaze. I might even use it to rub. Like I can rub through the area, and sometimes there's these like little holes that occur that the watercolor didn't cover perhaps, or the pastel, and that glazes it. That kind of unifies everything, and makes it glass. Like I do want this to be sharp. It's cut glass. It's sharp here. So I can certainly sharpen that up, and I have to pick a color. I wonder if that's going to work. This one. Yeah, see, and I can make like a sharp, I took away some of the chroma, and I'm fixing that sharp edge, because I want it to feel like cut glass. I mean, I'd have to nuance that, and it's really hard to hold a computer and paint, but that's, I think you just get the lesson here, right, of how I'm doing that. I can warm this up a little bit just to unify it. There'd be some warmth coming down from here. Okay, sorry, I'm making you guys nauseous, I'm sure. So.
Are you concerned at all about the toxicity of the pastels on your?
No, not at all. No. On my hands, you mean? No, because I wash my hands after, I just don't eat in the room. First of all, the watercolor, the advantage also is that it eats up some of the tooth. So there's not that, I have a tray down here. There's not that much in the tray right now. But I don't blow on the paper. That's like a big no-no. Oh yeah, that's too white. I have to fix that. I don't blow. But if I get crumbs, I'll knock so the crumbs fall. Like once the paper gets really thick with pigment, like let me bring this, this is black sanded paper with no underpainting. I didn't do an underpainting. I just went in direct application, mostly soft pastel, boom, 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 like you can see big marks, I like working like that too, this makes more dust. And, for instance, when I carved in the darks up in here, yeah, that's pastel on top of the black paper. It's like a dark, almost warm red on top of this black paper. The crumbs fall, and it actually fell on the white flour. I was like, oh, damn. So you have to knock it at the back. And then I went back on top with the whites, to keep it clean, because that's what you don't want. Sometimes you can turn the painting this way. if you don't want to contaminate an area that's very light, you know, I turn it upside down, or I'll turn it sideways if I want to do that. It depends on the look. I mean, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of my style, stylistically, I move around a lot because the reason is, it's like if you sign your name with a big fat Sharpie and you sign your name with a skinny pencil, your signature looks different, right? Because your instruments are different. And that goes for the papers you work on or the surfaces. So I work on velour sometimes. It's beautiful surface. It's called, it's Bainbridge makes it. And it's actually a suede mat board that framers use to make, you know, a mat, but I get the scraps from my framer and I paint, and some of my work is done on that. And then everything looks real dreamy, you know, it's a different look. So my hand changes according to like how I react to how hard or soft the paper is or how gritty the paper is, whether I've used a watercolor underpainting. There's methods where you can use charcoal on the paper and then spray the charcoal. I don't use fixative. I only use fixative if I'm going to use a lot of charcoal and I don't want to muddy the colors, or I'll use fixative rarely if I run out of tooth. But these days I'm not really running out of tooth, so I don't. And the reason I don't use fixative is that it darkens the color. And if I'm going to go to frame this, why would I want to spray it and change the values and change the chroma? I've worked so hard to get it where I want it to be. And I've used expensive pastels. So why would I want to spray all these expensive pastels that it just like, you know, fixative makes no sense to me. You know, I'd rather just, and I don't find that the pastel comes off. Like I've shipped a whole bunch of paintings to France, and as far as I know, there was no problem. They had problems getting there, but there's no problem with the painting itself. So see, I just covered up that space because that's still a quote white flower, but I use this lavender and I'm just going to lighten the tip to insinuate there's another flower through here. You know, I'm trying to unify, and I don't like the unfinished white, like there's even white paper showing. I don't like that. I should have like covered that a little better, but it's, you know, fine. Oh yeah, and I lost, I like that this was the back of the flower. I lost that. I want to put that back. I kind of like that you see the underbelly of the, whatever you call that, the stem, you know, so I want to make sure that that's there. You know, the quality of my drawing is important. So I'll lose the drawing and then I'll reconstitute it. But in reconstituting it, I have to also be careful not to over render, you know, especially if I'm looking to do a piece that's loose, that's, you know, has a freedom to it. If I want a tight, detailed, you know, if I really want to get married to the details, then I'm, you know, nothing wrong with that. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll do a piece that's like that. I'm going to close this. I don't need that to come all the way around. It's a little boring. So I'm just kind of closing off the top, you know, cut that off. I mean, this, you know, more or less is somewhat finished. I mean, I might spend a little more time, you know, looking at shapes and resolving some shapes. I might I might spend a little more time pulling up some of the lights. Did that answer your question, by the way? When you asked me about toxicity? Yes, yeah, I don't, because, you know, it's the same pigment that's in oil paint, and everybody, you know, worries about that with pastel, but I mean, oil paint, it definitely gets on your hands. You're using, you know, mediums and terps, and so there's, you know, there's toxicity in everything we do, and it's just a matter of not, you know, I don't want to breathe it. So again, that's why you don't blow, because you don't want it blowing back. You know, when I drop a pastel, I'm always like, oh man, I, you know, drop the pastel, and is that, you know, I mean, sometimes that does kick. I have an air purifier in here, and I can hear it go, and it clicks on when I drop a pastel. It knows, you know, oh no, there's dust in the air. And that's a good thing to have. I have a small little air purifier. So I'm just, you know, nuancing the shape of some of these flowers. I'm using kind of like grayed out versions of this dark. And I'm also, the darks will draw the eye. So you have to watch how much dark, how deep the darks are. In the photo, this is very dark, but Oh, and now I'll show you the color photo just so you see. It's interesting to see that here, it's right here. I've been kind of looking at it a little bit, but you know, see that? But the color photo, if I use this, my painting would be this. I don't need it. I mean, I have a photo. I don't need to make a photo. I don't need to make a photo, but I will use this as inspiration. And I'm going, oh, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. There's like a green in there. You know what? So I throw this to the side. I say, maybe, let me see. I'll play around with it. You know, it gives me, you know, but I don't use it to the, you know, so here I use this green. This is really truly green, right? I've been using like the yellows. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I want to go a little darker. If I don't like it, I brush it out. I mean, you know, I always, what if is the best question you can ask yourself. What if I do this? What if I do that? It gives us, you know, a way to not be stale is, for me, at least that's helps me when I think, oh, well, and, you know, sometimes I say, what if, and it's an abominable failure, but at least you know, didn't stick to I'm not formulaic. I mean, I have certain things that I'll kind of always do. Like I always will attack the darks first. I'll always put my darks in, because then from there, I'll say, well, if that's my darkest dark, then what happens from there, you know, and where's my lightest light? And did I go light enough? You know, maybe I need to make that little clip of, what do you call it? Lemon, where the light's hitting the lemon. It is see-through, it's very translucent. You know, maybe I want to bump the value and make it a little more, you know, a little lighter. Maybe I want to change that shape, get a little more drama there, you know? And then I think, well, let's see. I don't really see too many highlights. Like the highlights hitting the vase I don't want the attention to be on the vase. So I'm not going to put highlights. And as a matter of fact, I feel like this is just too uniform. Each piece of cut glass, I want them, it's like windows in a house. You should never paint them the same color, even top to bottom and window to window. You know, there's going to be differences in the glass, and that's the same here. So I need to work on that. I'm not sure what I'll do, but I know that's not finished. Like that's really bugging me now. You know, it looks too, so let's see, you know, I might just close some of that down, you know, like my original, I kind of had it that way. And then I got excited about the yellow reflection, you know. And, you know, sometimes when you get to a painting and you get really excited about a color or one thing, if it's not working for the whole painting, lose it. You know, you really don't marry yourself too much to like, this is a dark, rich, really pretty purple. And I'm loving it in here. Now, I don't know if it's going to work for the painting, but I'm putting it in. I'll stand back and I'll try to determine, is that taking the focus away? Did that add? I kind of like it right now. I'm going to leave it. You know, I may, you know, in a day or two, I might go, oh no, that's not working. Let me bring it close so you can see that chroma, and I'll take a picture. You know, I have overhead lights and quite a bit of light in here, but I don't know. Can you guys see that purple I added right in the darks in there? Probably not.
Yes.
I like it because it looks like it's between the stems.
Right.
And
it gives a little, right. And you know, in foliage, there is a lot of, especially outdoors, I'm always putting purples in my greens. It's like purple's a friend of green. I think one of the instructors who I so totally admire, this Richard McKinley, if you look up his work, and he's a brilliant teacher, but that's one of his sayings. Purple is a friend of green. He'd say that. So, you know, and I'm looking at the photo, I'm looking at the value, and there's some like little clips of peaks of, you know, whites showing, you know, whites, lights, lights showing through. So I'll find my definition in that way in mark making. And pastel, what's the funnest part of it is we can make marks. We can't, oops, that was a little too much, but we can, you know, we can make a line, we can make a mark. I mean, you know, there are times where sometimes when I'm teaching, I do this and I wreck my painting, but this is a fun thing to do. And we'll see if it works. I don't know if it's going to work. Where's the, but you know, sometimes line, I'll think, will that help my painting? I don't know, it might. I'm looking for this Oh, here it is. It's like a magenta. I don't know. So sometimes I'll think, let's see, what if I don't know, what if I just start using this, not everywhere, but just to give a little character, a little, you know, and I'll bring the computer here up. I can hold it and do this at the same time. Sorry again for twirling you around. Like I'm not going to do it here because, but you see how I'm using this. I mean, you know, maybe I want a little definition, a little line. I mean, it might end up looking very cheesy, so I'm not going to do it everywhere, and I'm not sure I'm going to keep it. But if you look at some of my paintings, I use line. You can kind of see the drawing through here. I didn't even close that in, and I might leave it. I might say, you know, I'm going to leave that. But maybe, you know, through here, I want to do that. So it's, I don't know, it's not a trick. It's just a technique. It's you know, there's some artists, I can't think of them offhand now, who are the greats, you know, some of the greats who, when Mary Cassatt actually does it, you look at her portraits and there's always a line, the baby's face to the mother, it's subtle, but when you look at the painting, there's this like nice, you know, flesh to flesh. That's how she designates the difference. I mean, she might not use magenta. That's a little obnoxious, you know, but a lot of my flamingo paintings, I have done that. It gives, to me, a more impressionistic, less realistic look. If that's what I want to express, then that's what I'm going, you know, that's what I'm going to use, you know. I want to show, I love the centers of flowers. I get into them. Let's see, this one I might warm it up and darken it a little bit, let it stick out a little more. That gives that a little punch. You know, sometimes I want the punch, so I don't want it there. You know, I don't want it everywhere. So I noticed there was one question down here. Was that already asked, or include a photo of the completed painting? Oh, I will. Margaret wrote that, asked, I will definitely send Margie, I guess it is, the complete finish. I might not, you know, finish. I might not do too much more here. You know, I'm kind of liking it. I might close down, you know, some of this detail. And I also, the reason I don't like to finish it all at once is because we do need our eye to rest, go away. Sometimes I'll create another painting. I want to be careful I don't get a sharp line between foreground and background, and I'm happy with that amount of edge. You know, sometimes my edges tend to get too, you know, sharp, and then I'm not happy. I also have to watch symmetry. You know, I don't need it to be perfect, but I might have cut the vase a little too narrow here, I'm noticing. So, you know, I'll play with things like that, but see with pastel how easy it is to kind of make sure your drawing's better. You can fix that. This is probably a little light down here. You know, I'm just putting some value in. And I can show, you know, the deep, there's a thickness to the glass. If I want to play with all that, I can. I just don't think I need it in this painting. You know, I don't think it's necessary. You know, I might pull some of these. I'm still like edging towards going lighter. You know, oops. So, but you know, if I overdo it, then I'm going to lose. If I overdo with the lights, I'm going to lose some of the drama. So, you know, you really got to watch how much how much you start putting in. I kind of feel like my eye wants one here, some light here, a little more around here. No, maybe just I'll give it a little bit. And any questions? And where are we with time? How are we? Because it's, oh, I think we're closing down because it's 8. Okay. But do you remember, I think now we can do the question and answer if you guys have some questions. Is there anything I can repeat or, you know, tell you, or any other questions about pastel or other techniques that you can use with pastel? See, I added a little dark here because I want that balance. It needs it. It needs the strength. It's just with the darks, I'm careful not to go, you know, if I went like too hard, really dark like that, you know, you're gonna go, oh, there's a big dark mark there, you know, it's too much. So you have to, you know, temper your darks. I actually don't even mind if this bleeds into this background, you know, through here. This is kind of sharp, so I'm gonna, you know, use that technique and just gently glaze and cut that edge so it's not so sharp along here. Someone was gonna ask something. I heard a little, you can unmute now and ask me questions.
I had a question.
Sure.
Two questions. The first one was, how do you clean pastels?
Oh, I did say I work with it clean. And so 2 ways. I have my apron, which is quite dirty below. That's where I've been rubbing. See? So I rub my belly, you know, with the stick, because then I throw this in the wash, the apron. But before that, I used to use paper towels to clean. And so when you know, if I was to put this, I won't do it. But if I was to put this, well, I'll do it. Just look. I'll put that here. Okay, I can get rid of it. But see how it picked up the dirt. Now, if I want to put pure yellow down, that's how you get mud, because it's dirty. So if I have to go into a dark passage with a lighter pastel, I'm going to clean it and then use it again. Now, I don't want that there, so I'm using my nifty makeup brush to brush that off. And I can leave it or go back in, you know, if I want to make it, enrich it, I can put the dark back on top, you know, kind of like it now, because it kicks off it kicked off a little warmth, you know. But, you know, I also clean the makeup brush. You know, if you have a passage that you really don't like, sometimes I use a bigger brush than this. I go outside. I don't do this in my studio, but I'll brush off the whole darn pastel and I'm like, voila, I like it better that I brushed off the, you know, if I get too detailed, like, you know, back in the day when I got really detailed with stuff, you know, I would brush it off and then discover that, oh yeah, I over rendered it. I overworked an area, you know, that's why it's not looking good. So it's just very forgiving. But cleaning, so, you know, the apron I like because, you know, it's more environmentally friendly. And also the paper towels, when you go to tear the piece off, the dust goes flying, you know, every time I tear off this piece. So that's why I like the apron, because I'm not ripping something and causing more dust to go in the air. But I do like to use, this is Viva, the old Viva, that doesn't have any waffling. I like that better than, this is a piece of Bounty, you know, see all the, like, that's better for watercolor, to clean your watercolor brush. But I don't like cleaning my pastels on this because it's, you know, it's not smooth. People use a rag, you know, you could use just a chamois or something to clean them. I have I bought it, it's like $100. It's worth it if you paint in pastel a lot. It looks like a tub. It's only about this big. And I fill it with grits, like Quaker grits, dry grits. And you turn on and you put all the pastels in, all colors, all soft, hard, it doesn't matter. You cover, there's a knob, you cover the top, you flick the switch and it agitates it slowly. It's like a very slow washing machine. And you can clean like 30 pastels at once. So when I do a painting and I have, you know, and these get all dirty, you know, by the end of, you know, 2 days of painting or 3 days, I take this whole thing, dump it in the cleaner, 5 minutes later, I don't have to rub anything with anything. It's just, you fish it out of the, you know, the grits, and then they're clean as could be, you know. And it's called the Cherry Pastel Cleaner. That's the only brand, the only they're a nice company. And I think it went for like $80 or $90 or $100.
Okay.
And it's worth it if you use a lot of pastels and you're painting a lot and you really, because it would take me hours sometimes to like clean the whole thing and, you know, all, like to get them all clean again. And like twice a year I take like my boxes and I take the pastels out and I clean them and I resort them. It's like, we all do that. I mean, all the crazy pastelists, we spend like 3 days, like, and then everybody puts it on Facebook. Look how clean my palette is. And it's fun. And then that lasts, you know, like 30 seconds and then it's dirty again. It's like making your bed.
Your spring and fall cleaning.
Right, right, spring cleaning. I mean, people, I don't do this, but people even take the foam out of the bottom of the box and they vacuum it, they go outside and they dump it or whatever they do.
Okay.
You know, oh, one note also, like I use the brushes for watercolor, right? But if you're going to use rubbing alcohol and melting the pastel, like in that technique, which is a fun, really fun technique as well. I don't think we have time for me to show you, but use a different brush. I mean, I still use a flat, you know, watercolor brush, but designate it, like don't use your alcohol brush with your watercolors.
Right.
You know, it's important not to mix that because you'll wreck your watercolors, I think, or wreck your brush. So.
And
yeah.
my second question was, in your particular painting, it's a pastel with a lot of watercolor still left.
Right.
Is that considered, because in the Franklin Art Association, we have a category called mixed media.
Good question.
Is that considered mixed media, or is that considered pastel?
It's a good question. If I were going to put this into a pastel competition, I would be nervous to do that.
Okay.
I probably would put a little more pastel down. And I like it where it is now, but maybe
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
but you know, maybe I would. But I generally, you know, because they say 80% pastel is the rule. So
Okay.
I have plenty of paintings I entered with watercolor underpaintings, and I left a lot of it. Nobody's measuring it. Like really, like who's going to know 80, 85%? You know, this one, maybe I'd be a little bit nervous because yeah, this is all watercolor. This is watercolor. This is watercolor. But, you know, actually everything else is pastel. So this might be okay. I'd have to think about it. I don't think I'd worry, but it is a good question. And like, but if I was going to enter this and there was a category mixed media, I would do that because like, it's fun for me not to be always in the pastel world, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's so funny because I'll post the watercolor underpainting, like that messy one I showed you guys. That one is really crazy messy. And, you know, people, don't touch it, leave it. It looks good the way it is, you know? And I think, oh, maybe I should just be a watercolorist because like, you know, you go with the pastel and it's a different look. I love that with this technique, you can feel the transparency, yet you get the vibrancy, you know? And with watercolor, whites are a nightmare. If you lose your whites, you're not, you know, I can find a white, I can keep going. I can keep making this whiter. I can make that whiter. I haven't done it yet, and I probably don't want to, but like I'll find, you know, the whitest white I have, which is, you know, there's some brands that make really white whites. Like here, this is probably one of the whitest whites. And I can, you know, I don't know if I want to do that, but you know, I can lay that right on top there and make it really white, you know. I mean, you can't really tell probably from there, but you know, that's it. That's the chip. It's white, white, you know. So with pastel, you can always add white, where watercolor, you know, you lose that white and you've lost it, you know. So yeah, those are good questions though. Anybody else? You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions?
Well, I had one more, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
My medium is watercolor.
Oh, okay.
But I use ink. I use a type of ink to accent my watercolors.
Right.
So and I use it with like a stick, and I put it into the ink. And
I've done that.
And I like doing that. And I have entered those in our Franklin Art group as a mixed media. And sometimes people say, well, how come that's mixed media? I said, because it's not 100. Yes, right. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, sure. And that would be mixed media. And you know, you can take watercolor paper, right? And you can do your watercolor and you can use your India ink. And then you take, I'll show you what it looks like. There's this stuff, and this is if you want to do this. It's called Art Spectrum in a jar, and it looks like this. It comes in colors too. So this is Fine Tooth Color Fix Primer Pastel, and multimedia primer. It's a primer with a lot of pumice in it. And this is clear. So if you take Arches watercolor paper or any kind of whatever you watercolor on, do your watercolor, use your India ink, and your stick. I use a stick from outside, and
Yes.
and then when you let it dry, then you paint this over. I pour this into like a Tupperware and sprinkle some water in it to open it up because it's thick. And I use like a household brush, like house painter's brush, like from the hardware store, like a vinyl, and I go crisscross, and it's going to smoke your painting up. It's going to dry smoky. Then you can pastel on top of that because now you've put grit. The pastel needs a little bit of grit. You can just take this stuff and add acrylic paint, and now you have a toned surface. And you know what gator board is? Do you know gator board?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll take black gator board or white gator board and tone this stuff and paint it crisscross on the gator board. Now I have a rigid surface that's textured, and I did a lot of my paintings of chickens on that surface.
Yeah. Can you tell me the name of that again, Karen?
Color Fix, well, it's backwards there in the camera, but Color Fix Primer, clear, Art Spectrum. I'm sorry, it's Art Spectrum Color Fix Primer. Art Spectrum is the company. And Jerry's in West Hartford sells it, and they sell it in different colors. So you can get it, I'll show you. I just poured it in a separate Tupperware. It comes ready-made in this color. It's a gorgeous color to do a landscape on. So I paint this on paper and let it dry, and then pastel, or I'll paint it on a rigid surface. You can paint it on wood and then let it dry and use pastel on top of it. It comes in jet black. It comes in a million colors. Elephant gray is the nicest gray.
Is it kind of like how gesso works?
It is. Gesso has a little bit of pumice, but plain gesso isn't really enough for pastel. So this is the gray, elephant gray. And this is
nice.
This is gator board. See, it's black gator board that I had a painting. I did a painting on this, and I hated the painting. So I took it outside, I hosed it down. Literally, I took the gator board, put it on my driveway, hosed it down, and then once it dried, I resurfaced it, and now I have a new surface. I can make another bad painting. Another bad painting.
I don't think you can.
No, I certainly can, believe me. And what was I going to say? So I love when you want, like if I'm doing an urban scene, I want something with a lot of movement. It's really cool when you pastel on, let me get it quick. I'll do this quick. This little tiny, here, because I have little, when I teach, I sometimes, I do a workshop where I teach on this stuff, but you can see, here's a small piece. And you see how you can see the movement, like the like crisscross. And when I let me take a fun color, like here, I'll take here, this is a good one. So when I pastel on it, you see how you can like, you get like a lot of texture coming through. And then you can, when you layer your colors, it's like really, I mean, you can go, there's a lot of texture through here. So, so you probably can't see it so well. Can you see that? All that
I can.
Because the pastel sits on the hills and not in the valleys. So the valleys become, like if this were grass, you don't really have to do much. It's going to look like grass because it's, and some artists will make, like they know that this is going to be the grass, so they'll make grass motion with the primer, and then they'll use a foam roller to make the sky smooth. Like I prefer to just make the whole thing irregular, and I work with it because I can get rid of the texture if I want to rub, and I can layer like crazy on this. Now gesso has pumice in it, but if you just take regular gesso and add a little bit of aluminum oxide, which you can get from your dentist. It's what they use to clean your teeth with. So I have a jar from my dentist of aluminum oxide, and you take a pinch. I mean, she gave me like a whole jar. I keep giving it out to my artist friends because I'll die and then I have all this aluminum oxide. They're like, why do you need all that? but you can make everything grittier by sprinkling more pumice, 4H pumice from the hardware store, or aluminum oxide into your gesso, and that gives you a lot of grit. Which, like, if I wanted to make this paper more, not this paper because I love this paper, but I have other paper that I don't like so much, I can change it by, I can use the paper some more by painting grit on top and making these solutions. I mean, I did a lot of experimenting over time, but now I'm at the point where I just want to paint. I don't want to be making my papers anymore, but it's fun. It's good to know about, it's good to have this, it in your toolbox. So, but those are great questions, and
Thank you.
yeah, and if you're interested in some of my workshops, I have them listed on my website. So, if you want to say, oh, where's she teaching next? I was supposed to be in Massachusetts on the 16th, but because COVID numbers are going up, we decided to make it virtual. So it's going to be a Zoom class like this.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
What is your
Karen,
website?
I need to step away, but thank you. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm gonna say goodbye. But last call for questions.
Bye.
Anybody else? Anyone
No.
else have any questions? Feel free to email me. I'll send the finished, thing to Margie. And happy
Thank you,
painting.
Karen.
You're welcome. Happy painting. Take care.
Oh, thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.